Hey, welcome back to the Flip Flop Power Hour. It's the Monday Night Live, and we're here with JC Morales, our good friend and partner.
How are you, man?
I'm good, and we'll just jump in, guys. We're going to have a great time today. Bring your questions. We're talking about syndications and how the local population can participate in syndicated real estate investments on the island of Puerto Rico, and just how powerful this form of investment is. And so we're calling JC a syndication expert because he's done it at least twice, and that's a lot. And he's got really cool projects. So we'll just kind of jump through that. You want to tell us about Joy's project that you helped him to syndicate? Because I think that one's so cool because you've got kind of a broad range of people that are all locals, right? Through Joy's and your social media efforts. Yep. And yeah, it's right here also. We could throw a rock to it here. So
first of all, thanks so much, guys, for having me here. JC Morales, I'm here from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and I wouldn't say I'm a syndication expert, but I would say I could relate more if you've never done one before, because I've only done two in the last 3 months, essentially. But I've been studying it for about a year. Before that, I actually joined a group called Legacy Family with my mentors, Tim Bratz and Fadi Boumitri, who actually taught me how to do this. And in simple terms, a syndication is essentially, instead of going to a bank to get the money and bringing the rest of the down payment and then just closing on a property, is actually, going out there and reaching out to other people that have money, that have capital.
Right.
And you say, hey, guys, I have this project. Do you guys want to be my partners? And then the syndication is a established template of documents. You hire a specific attorney. We can get into that later on. And then they create all the disclosures of what it's going to look like. So what's really cool about syndications that I really like is that you don't have to figure it out. You don't even have to know how to do it. What you are going to need is the attorney is going to ask you for maybe like 10 bullet point things that are important. The rest of the document is pretty standard, and I think there's a lot of benefits that go into that.
And I think what's really cool about syndication, especially in Puerto Rico, and you talked a little bit about it, is we have a liquidity problem here, right? Like, so to be able to go and finance the property that Joy and found, that you're partnered with them over here, it's very distressed, and then you're buying it and going to rip it apart and then rebuild it, right? So to go to the bank and say, hey, lend me money on this, they're going to look at you like you've got 3 eyeballs and tell you, I'm sorry, we love you, but no, there's no chance you're going to borrow money against something like that, right? It had no cash flow. It's in poor condition. And so even if it had cash flow, it wasn't. I mean, there's multiple reasons that they're going to say no. Plus, banking and liquidity is a problem in Puerto Rico anyways. So
I would say in Puerto Rico, what I see, do you think there's a liquidity problem, or is more like a financing lack of competition, or like a lack of competition when it comes to financing? I think there's a combination of both. I think if we had more banks here, they would be forced to be more creative, a little bit more aggressive. But in Puerto Rico, we used to have a lot of banks. Now we have 3 major banks, right? Banco Popular, First Bank, and then Oriental, and then there's a bunch of smaller mortgages.
Like community banks and the Cooperativo, they call it. Yeah. But basically, it's a one banking family kind of sets the pace and sets the rules for everybody else, and everybody knows whatever Banco Popular says is what everybody else is going to do.
Yeah. So what's funny? What I find is in Puerto Rico, we have all this really cool tax incentives, especially for real estate. And what I'm noticing is that, on one side, we have like amazing laws for tax incentives. Yeah. On the other side, if there's a lot of properties that are distressed. Yeah. Right. And then on top of that, the banks, not a lot of competition for banks, they're very uncomfortable with these properties to loan money on it. Yeah. So then on top of that, as if that wasn't enough, there's just a handful of hard money lenders, and they're very hard to find. Like it's not like there's an industry of hard money lenders out there. And then on top of that, the reason behind that is because, all the information that has to do with real estate, we don't have websites that fully work. Zillow sort of works in Puerto Rico, but doesn't really. So there's just like so many things that are like they don't compare to the US, that it all makes for that.
Right? Zillow exists in Puerto Rico, but it doesn't work at all, right? Like it's you could find a property and see pictures of it possibly, but it doesn't really give you much information other than that. So they don't even give us estimate here or tell you what something could possibly rent for. Some of the things that we're just kind of spoiled by in the States. If I actually earlier, I just typed in an address in Zillow in Florida, I stuck it in there, and in North Florida, it tells me, hey, this is a $300,000 house. It's going to rent for $1,800 a month. It's so many square feet. You know, It's been on the market for 175 days. It's like, wow, that's awesome. You look at Zillow here and it's like, oh yeah, there's a house here. Is it for sale? Is it, is that a old listing, a new listing? And there's really not much benefit to Zillow, but
yeah, like I think that all of those things are there. You and I cannot change them. We're not like in the tech business. We're not connected with the government. So we can only, I think that the way I ended up in syndication is I actually realized after 10 years of investing in Puerto Rico and bumping my face against so many walls and so many situations and trying to close a little studio apartment. It took me 13 months to close it, believe it or not.
To get a loan on a studio apartment. So this is something that's extremely financeable, right? Like
so financeable.
You should easily be able to go get a loan on
$110,000 apartment in 13 months.
Right. That's crazy. Yeah.
So essentially, when you put all that in there, you're like, okay, I have a couple of options. One of them is I can go to the United States to invest, or I can figure it out. So when I joined this group, Legacy Family, I started talking about syndicating multifamily apartments, and I kind of wanted to get into that. But in Puerto Rico, in particular, we don't have these massive buildings that you have in the U.S. And I guess it has to do with the fact that there's not a lot of financing for that. So it doesn't make sense for a bank to say, hey, I will finance you this construction. Yeah. And oh, by the way, we're going to refinance into like a 30-year commercial loan. They're just very uncomfortable with all that stuff.
And typically, before the crisis, what is that, 13, 14 years ago, Puerto Rico was very liquid. So you did have in 2004 and 5 and 6, all of these same loan products that we had in the States where your dog could basically get a loan at 120% of what something would appraise for. Yep. And then they got burned, right? Like all of the banks got burned. Several of them got burned so bad that they just went away. And now we're left with 4 banking institutions. And so there's really not a lot of competition. And I think that was one of your points just a minute ago. Without the competition, there's no reason for them to come out of their shell. And they're still a little shell shocked. They're still not yet fully convinced that Puerto Rico's come out of this decades long recession that they were in.
But the good news is, even though this all sounds kind of bad, the good news is, and I know this because I've established a relationship with the biggest bank, Banco Popular here, is that they are lending money. Yeah. And they negotiate rates, believe it or not. And I know that because I've been present in those tables. And so there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. Now, should we talk a little bit about syndication and why we did that?
Yeah, I think that's the point. Let's talk about syndication and how we can take people's cash, because while there's a liquidity problem, the economy is doing really well here. Yep. So local families are doing better now than they were 5 or 6 years ago before Maria, right. And they have some money to invest. Yep. And so how have you been able to tap into that and put together a deal like you did down the street here on Fernandez Juncos?
So I think that a couple of things that you have to think about is that at the moment, right now, we have certain conditions in the market that are going to make it a little bit easier to tell people, hey, let's partner up. And for me, it has to do with the fact that the market, the stock market's not doing great, right? So if the stock market was like growing like crazy, as if it was like a couple of years ago, yeah, and people were making over 10%, they would be pretty happy. But the fact that they took a big hit, and it happens to do with the uncertainty on the marketplace, the interest rates, all these jobs that have been lost to the biggest corporations. A lot of people are realizing, wait a minute, these 401ks and all this retirement accounts that I had, plus my investments in the stock market, they're actually not that great. And then now, real estate investors like you and me, now we can actually put our finger on the pain and say, hey, we have something that is actually just so simple to understand. Yeah. You can actually go and grab it with your hand. It's not like a stock where, I don't know about you, but I don't love it because I cannot paint it, I cannot build it, I cannot control it, I cannot do anything with it, right?
That's absolutely the way that I feel about it. I recommend that everybody have a healthy portfolio of mostly real estate, and to the point of pain. People are doing well. They're making money. They don't want to invest in the stock market. You don't want to be in bonds or even crypto. It's all been painful for the last year or two. And so what do they do with their excess money? Where do they go to invest? And you can say, hey, come and invest in this value add building and come alongside these other people. Let's build something really nice. It's going to appreciate in value. It's going to have cash flow. You're going to get a nice return on your investment. Plus you have lots of upside down the road. So it's a phenomenal vehicle to put your money in and grow wealth and build wealth. And I attest that buying real estate in Puerto Rico in 2023, that there's just not anything better than that. This is the perfect storm, right? Like, I shouldn't say this perfect storm with Maria, but this is a great time to be investing
in business storm.
This is the perfect time to be investing in real estate in Puerto Rico, because when liquidity comes, and it will come, that will free up a ton of cash, and the market will continue to rise. And we just started to have a positive economic growth in 2019, right before COVID, and people have work that want work. I mean, so there's lots of good reasons. And the fact that you can syndicate, buy this stuff, do the value add stuff. You've got a great team where you can take something that's sort of dilapidated and has no current use, and then bring it up to its highest and best use. This is just crazy good. This is really crazy good.
Amazing. Yeah. So essentially what we did when we looked into all these conditions is we said, okay, let's go ahead and try. We found a property that by itself, there's a good property, right? It happens to be in a good location. We actually happen to get a smoking deal on this property. So I'm just going to talk about this specific example. So we bought 9 apartment building. And when I say we, is my partner, Eduardo Joy, negotiated this. I came into the picture later on. He found this property for sale. They were asking $500,000. And he negotiated it for over a period of 6 to 9 months, something like that. And it's funny when he continued following up. So this is really important, guys. In order for you to get deals, you gotta follow up. I mean, this is some basic stuff. At some point, I remember that I think the property was they were around $300,000, and finally he came down to $210,000. And the broker said, "Hey, come see the property. Maybe you'll be more interested in like paying closer to where we are." He's like, "Listen, if I go to the building, I might end up offering you a lot less."
Gonna offer less, yeah.
So you don't want me to go to the building. So long story short, we get the property on the contract for $210,000. So we buy 9 apartments. We have 5 of those are 2 bedrooms and 4 are 1 bedroom for $210,000. So what is that, like $20-something thousand a unit?
I'll tell you, nine minus or divided by 10.
Yeah, something like that. So we're almost about $20-something thousand on that. What is that?
Yeah, $23,000, $23,300 a door. So
and this property happens to be about 5-minute drive, not even from the beach.
Yeah,
Ocean Park Beach, which is really good property. And essentially, we looked at the property. It's highly distressed. We know the bank is not going to give us any money. We know that if we go to a hard money lender, we're still going to have to put some money into it. And we decide, let's syndicate this property. This is a perfect property to syndicate. That way, we don't actually waste our time calling the banks and see if they would be willing to loan us money.
Just raise the money you need to purchase it and the money you need to finish the renovations.
Correct. So we sat down, Eduardo and I sat down, over Zoom call, took out a spreadsheet, and we just draw out what the property would look like when it was all said and done.
Yeah.
We looked at the, at the potential of making this into a long-term rental apartments, which is what he's very good at. And then I also said, hey, let's look at it as a short-term rental, right? And the reason why we did those 2 comparisons is because I always recommend to have, 2 exit strategies, right? So you have your conservative one, which is your long-term rentals, and then you have your aggressive one, which would be short-term rentals. But then on top of that, I said, wait a minute. We also have a third potential option, which is to make this into a hotel. And oh, by the way, boutique hotels happen to, be able to have, not only do they get to charge a little bit more, because some people are looking for that intimate, experience.
Right.
But in Puerto Rico, the government has created amazing tax incentives. And now when we put those tax incentives into a pro forma, then the numbers look amazing. And then that's when we decided.
So I have some questions about that. So you're buying something at $23,000 a door. It works for long-term rental.
Yes.
Right. Like it would, after a renovation, it would cash flow. It would give you a nice return. So it's a good deal.
Yep.
now you could change your use up to hospitality or nightly rentals. And so now your pro forma grows, gets a little bit better. Then you realize, hey, we're in Puerto Rico. And so we can take advantage of Act 60 tourism tax credits and get 40% on all of the costs from the purchase through the renovation, first year's operation, and the first year's marketing budget. So you just blow up your numbers. You get almost half of your entire investment back. What is someone who comes into that deal? Because if you're inviting me in, you know, I'm going to say, all right, well, look, if I put 100 grand in, how does it work, JC? What do I get back? How long does my money stay with you? And what kind of a return on investment do I get? And oh, by the way, I'm a local Puerto Rican. Can I participate in this? Can I be a part of an Act 60 project? Because I heard that I can't. Like, I thought that's like only for the gringos.
So yeah, it's funny that you said that. So what do you get when we looked at the numbers? We said, hey, you know, because we're going to be attracting partners into the deal. Partners share the benefits of the investment, right? So what does that look like? So when you're syndicating a property, there's a lot of things that you're going to be taking advantage of. So the one big thing that you just mentioned, which is a really important thing, is that your cost basis gets shaved to almost half.
Almost half.
So imagine if we put in $1 million into this building, when it's all said and done, we're actually going to get what's called a tax credit of 40%, almost half. That means now we're really into the property for about $600,000. Finished, welcoming guests into beautiful, amazing, charging. So
and you guys don't do things second class. I mean, Edgardo Joy renovates things at a really great level, and you like to really you just deliver the value. You guys are the greatest team I've seen to do this kind of project. I really think that you guys are going to hit it out of the park.
Amazing.
And I can't wait till we're doing one.
I know that's going to be awesome. No, I know your wife is awesome too, decorating and having great ideas. So essentially the benefits, what does somebody get? So if somebody puts in, first of all, one of the things we decided is let's make it easy. First of all, let me start with the basics. Tourism tax incentives do apply, or Puerto Ricans can qualify, like they do qualify.
You are allowed to invest that way.
100%. Like Puerto Ricans can get it, and also Americans. So first of all, that myth debunked. Sorry.
So it's a strange myth because you hear it on both sides. I hear from people in the States, oh, I can't participate in Act 60 unless I move to and live in Puerto Rico. And then I hear it all the time from locals, I can't invest in Act 60 tourism because I'm a local and I've always lived here. And both of those statements are wrong.
So 100% of our partners in this deal are born and raised in residents of the island of Puerto Rico.
And that's just
100%.
amazing.
And they will get 40%. We will get our cost basis down to 60%. Right? So that's the first thing. They're going to, when we do distributions to them, they will be 100% exempt on taxes. Can I get ahead?
So you pay the 4% tax, right? And the corporation inside of your LLC that you set up, that you syndicated. And through Act 60, part of the benefit is a 4% corporate tax. And that's it. That's the extent of the tax. Then you distribute, and there is no more tax for your partners.
Exactly. So then if you guys see that, that's like pretty amazing. As if that wasn't enough, I can keep going. There's a lot of more benefits that go into that, but just those things are like second to none, I think. And essentially what we said is like, when you're doing a syndication, and you finally look at all these strategies, it is important to say, hey, I've done the research. We could do this as a long-term rental. This is to be like the worst case scenario. We're going to cash flow.
And it still works.
You could do short-term rentals. It's going to be really nice because, you know, we're going to be able to charge more than long-term rentals. And oh, by the way, we're actually going to make it into a boutique hotel. So people are going to pay a lot more for it. And our costs are going to be a lot less for the property. So it's just incredible to have multiple extra strategies. And what we tell our partners, when you're syndicating a property, you're essentially explaining what I just said to them. And I said, hey guys, we looked at this, it looks good. We looked at this, it looks good. Because all these things come in the conversations with our partners. And essentially what we decided is, let's make this particular syndication. So when you are doing a syndication, there's two buckets. Okay, so bucket A is a syndication where you set it up so that you can take what's called non-accredited investors.
Friends and family, they call it.
Friends and
sometimes.
family, it means you have what's called a substantive relationship with that person, which means it's not like I just met you.
Yep.
Like right now, I have a substantive relationship with Robert.
Yep.
I met you a couple months ago. We've hung out a couple of times. I
Right.
know your family, etc. Right?
Yep.
You know me. So
It's not hard to have a substantive relationship either. Like 5 or 6, 10 points of contact should do it, right?
Yes,
Especially if you are having conversations that last more than like 5 seconds or something. Like you an email, coming to the house, going to dinner.
Yep.
You know, these are the kind of things that build relationships, and then you talk about investing together.
Even meeting in like a real estate meetup a couple of times and all those things, and maybe even doing a Zoom, right? Doing a couple of Zooms.
I think that's a great point. If you'd like to partner with JC or I, you know, a comment here would be good. You know, comment one if you think that partnering with JC or Robbie would be a fun thing to do.
Yep.
And go ahead and hit the like button for us if you would, because that helps us to get this stuff out. YouTube will send it out more. So
we have the option A, non-accredited. We have the option B would be accredited. And accredited investors is essentially individuals that, their net worth is $1 million, excluding their primary residence.
right.
So that's one of the qualifications. Or B, that they have earned over $200,000 in the last 2 years of tax returns.
So $200,000 a year, 2 years in a row, right?
If they filed single,
yeah.
and if they file jointly, it has to be $300,000 for the last
2 years in a row.
It's that simple. So
So you don't do it the first time. You got to get it the second time, right? You've got to be successful for a couple of years in a row.
Yeah. So essentially, when we set up a syndication, so going back, I say, hey, I'm going to syndicate because I know I have a financing, issue. So I'm going to syndicate. Now I'm going to say, hey, are we doing non-accredited 506B? It's called. Or am I doing accredited, which is 506C as in Charlie? And then I had that conversation with Joy. I said, hey, Joy, what are we doing? He said, listen, I want to give Puerto Ricans an opportunity to invest. I want to debunk the myth.
Yeah.
So this become almost like a game for us. We're like, hey, we want to debunk the myth. After this,
I'm so glad you did it so that we can just keep having this conversation. Like we could have this conversation 6 days a week and just keep putting it out there.
Yep.
It can't get out there enough because unfortunately, it really is poorly known, or it's not widely known who can use Act 60 and what portions of it and why. And so anytime that we get a chance to talk about this and just let people know it, I think it's important.
Yeah,
right?
because, part of the conversations were like, listen, we could have actually bought this ourselves and not invited anybody.
Sure.
We could have just said,
it wasn't even that big of a deal, right? Like
it's very small. It's like, we call you and say, hey, Robbie, do you know anybody? Can we work on this? We close it like this really fast.
Or you could have gone the other way. You could have gone to one accredited investor.
Done.
Got all of the money.
Done.
But I like the way that you did it so that you invite a lot of people in, not just so that we debunk the myth, but also you're creating real estate investors. Like each one of the people who partnered with you on this now have a deal under their belt.
Yes.
And they get to come see it go, have some say in it maybe. I know you guys do meetups and that you keep them very involved. So yeah, it's a brilliant thing that you've done.
Yeah. So the cool thing about the syndication is now, Joy's like, hey, let's do non-accredited. I want to actually raise the money.
And so non-accredited again is the 506.
B as in boy.
B as in boy.
B as in boy. So all these terms, you don't have to know them. You don't have to be an expert. You'll contact an SEC attorney, Securities and Exchange Commission attorney. They've spent the 100,000 hours figuring this out.
Yeah.
They already have the templates of these documents created. They're going to ask you for the 5 or 10 bullet points on how you want to actually distribute the benefits of the investment. You get to decide that. They go and draft the documents. They bring it back to you. You ask a bunch of questions, and they say, hey, you know what? Go and raise the money.
And basically, they create a document that says to all of your investors, hey, if you invest in this, you could lose all of your money.
Pretty much.
And they tell you that over a 40-page document again and again and again, so that if you invest in this, you could lose all of your money.
Exactly.
The likelihood of that happening when you do an Act 60 tourism tax credit play is like next to none, but
pretty much
you still sign something that says you could lose all of your money.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool because when you think about a contract, I don't know if you knew this, but in Puerto Rico, the contracts are not standard. So in Puerto Rico, when let's say we come up with the perfect contract, by the time I send it to you, you change the clause, then you send it to somebody else. By the time it ends up like exchanging 10 hands, it became like an apple became like a dolphin.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it just became something else. What's
It's
cool
not
about
standardized, in other
there's
words.
no standardization. I
Yeah.
also learned this the hard way by talking to my attorney. He's like, listen, it's unfortunate, but this is what happens in Puerto Rico. So what's cool about syndication, these documents are regulated by the SEC, and there's not that much tweaking that can occur. So by the time that I send it to you, there's not much.
The document stays the same.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah. There's
And so what's the timeline? How long does it take? And the other question that I would have for you is how much does it cost?
yeah. So-
Roughly. And
So the timeline that I've experienced is anywhere from 3 weeks would be very fast to around 4 to 5 weeks.
okay.
So that's the timeline.
So a little over a month.
Yep. And then the cost is anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. We get a little bit cheaper because we happen to have a relationship with someone.
Yep.
But that's around the price. Obviously, it can get a lot more expensive than that depending on who you talk to. I mean, I've seen when I looked into it, I've seen it could be anywhere from 30,000 and up easily. And the way they do that is they'll say it's 15,000. But if you want me to get on a call with your investors and answer questions, it's by the hour.
Oh, so
And
they'll come online and do fundraising for you.
They will come in and help you answer some questions to your investors.
Yeah.
And I think that might actually be beneficial if the deal is really large and you're
Yeah.
raising a lot of money and you have maybe 100 people on a Zoom call.
Sure.
And you have very sophisticated investors in there asking like very particular questions.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've learned is that when you end up like going in that direction, it would be worth the money to have them in the call.
If it's a big enough deal, for
If
sure.
It's a big enough
Yeah.
deal. But yeah, essentially going back to syndication, we decided it was going to be a 506B, non-accredited, and we were going to raise $900,000,
Okay.
which was essentially the $210,000 purchase price,
Right.
the about $350,000 of infrastructure stuff. So plumbing, electrical, windows,
Mhm.
and things of that matter. And then the balance of that would be split between an acquisition fee, which we can talk about, and furniture and decorations, interior designer, and all that type of stuff.
So now, did you buy the property in an LLC before you syndicated, or did you set up the syndication and then close on it inside of the syndication all at one time?
So that's a really good question.
Because I think you could do it either way. But
Yeah. So I think that what happened was that we had the property under contract for, I think it was Joyce LLC.
Yeah.
And then we had created the syndication. We had the property under contract and we assigned it
okay.
to the property to the one that was going to be in the syndication. So that way we save a good amount of money on
So you actually closed directly into the syndication.
Yep.
As opposed to like I just closed on a building over here, not too far from yours, but
Yeah.
down the road a little bit. And we may do this syndication thing. We're not sure which
Okay.
way we're going to go, but if we chose to, we've already closed on it, and then we would have to, I guess, sell it into or put it into the syndication.
It might make sense to do that because also what we've realized. So one of the things that we did, so for syndication, I think there's value if you're an investor, is that there's a lot of work. I mean, Joy spent 9 months of follow-up. He would negotiate the property down from 500 to 210,000.
Yeah.
Him and I spent God knows how many hours,
Yeah.
Zoom calls, trying to figure out the numbers, making sure that we could provide the most value to our partners and investors. A million exit strategies. Who are we gonna? There's just like hours and
Yeah.
hours of making sure at the end of the day we are protecting your money.
Yeah.
As much as we can, and then we don't get paid for doing all this, believe it or not.
Right. Well, you don't get paid until the end, right? Or
Yeah. So
close to the end.
depending on how you set it up, what you can do is you can set up an acquisition fee,
Mhm.
which is literally a fee that you build into the syndication, which is one of the questions that the attorney will ask is, hey, are you charging acquisition fees? Are you charging management fees, asset management fees?
Yep. Part of the 10 or 12 questions that you said the lawyer is going to ask you up front before
Correct.
he starts to set up your paperwork.
Yeah, he's going to ask you, are you taking an acquisition fee? So when we actually make that decision, we look into the numbers. And one of the ways that I've learned recently is that you can do an acquisition fee, of 3%, as an example. That's what I've seen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have to be 3%, because what's cool about syndication is that you get to write
If you're the syndicator,
you get to write up the terms.
Yep.
And when you raise the money, it's full disclosure. There's nothing hiding. That's what's really cool. Everybody knows what's going on. You can say, hey, I am actually taking a $50,000 acquisition fee,
Yep.
$100,000. I've seen acquisition fees for bigger deals of close to almost $1 million.
Well, we know there are people out there doing real, Grant Cardone, you mentioned him, and I'm not privy to his stuff, but I know that the way he's structured it, he's taking some pretty big acquisition fees. Yep. Or he'll close on something and then sell it into a fund. But as long as he discloses, I bought it for $1 million, I'm putting it in a fund of $2 million.
Yep.
And I'm Grant Cardone.
Yep.
And people will still give you the money. Pretty much. That's great.
So one of the things that I would think is that if you happen to have purchased a property under an LLC, I'm not a lawyer, but there's nothing that says you can't sell it to the fund.
Yeah.
And as long as
you disclose.
As long as you disclose, which you will have to, and as long as there's still value being created.
Sure.
Right? Because you have to get paid. And what I found out is even sometimes the 3% acquisition fees, they're not really that much money. The amount of resources that it takes to finally get a deal under contract.
Well, a 3% acquisition fee on a $200,000 acquisition is really not very much money for the amount of work that you put into it.
But we would
do a $2 million one, and now 3% becomes something that's bigger. But
but we would actually do the acquisition fee on the entire raise. So let's say if we were raising $1 million, it would still be what was that, like $30,000?
30 grand. It's still not very much money.
It's not that much money. Yeah. Think about divide the amount of 100 hours. Yeah. It's so what we found out is that we have to be very respectful of our time and the amount of equity. And at the end of the day, say, hey, if we buy a $3 million property for 1.5, can we sell it to the fund for $2 million? They're still getting $1 million discount.
Yeah.
We make 500,000, and we are, we get fed today.
And what does the lawyer say? He says that's okay?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So again, at the end of the day, you're going to go out there and talk to people like you and me.
Yeah.
Right? You disclose and you say, hey, we're investors. We're looking for opportunities. We've created $1 million worth of equity on this particular example.
Yep.
Are you okay with that? No, that's cool. Right.
Yep.
And then somebody else will say, listen, all day. Right. It's kind of like wholesaling.
I would say, well, I'm an investor who's done thousands of deals. And if somebody brings me a deal that's got $1 million worth of equity, I have a hard time figuring out why I'm going to say no to it. Right.
Exactly.
If it's got $1 million worth of equity and it's a $10 million investment, that's one thing. But if it's got $1 million worth of equity and it's a $2 million investment, what's the problem?
Exactly. So that's what I think. At the end of the day, we as investors and even as as people that are watching, don't put your head on somebody else's head. Just because you might be worried or concerned, oh, maybe is this right or not, just don't do that. Just ask the questions. What I'm here to tell you is there's a lot of work involved in it, and you need to get compensated appropriately, because if not, what's going to happen is eventually you're going to say, listen, it's a lot of work, I'm not going to syndicate, and then you're going to fall back into where you were. So
let's say you set up this fund over here. What kind of a return is an investor expected to get? What are you telling them? This is what we expect.
So typically our numbers are based on rates, and we do a pretty hefty competitor analysis of the area.
Right.
And our rates, we do them really low. So we'll do our rates, and I've seen yours too, is the same. We're very, very conservative. So we'll say, hey, we're gonna rent a 1-bedroom apartment for about $110 a night. Yeah. Which is very low. And we're going to rent a 2-bedroom apartment for $168 a night.
Yeah.
When in a boutique hotel, you'd be paying easily $300 or a lot more money for that.
Well, and even like what we're in here, this a 2-bedroom Airbnb. When we started to think about the investment, we didn't syndicate, or I don't even think we partnered with anybody on this one, but we ran our numbers at like $140, $150 a night. And we've got 4 of these now. So 2 of them we have a couple of years of experience with. Our nightly rate is closer to $200 a night throughout the year.
It's amazing.
It's $250 at the peak. It's $180 at the at the worst part of the year, but it averages out to about $200 a night.
Exactly.
And here in Santurce, we can rent these things at a pretty high occupancy rate. And this is just a one-off condo, but we can approach 70% occupancy on something like that at that $200 a night rate.
Yeah. So for us, based on our very, very conservative numbers, this particular investment is going to pay 10.58%. So 10.5%.
Okay.
It's really going to make more like 15 or 18%, something like that.
But you want to underpromise and overdeliver.
Pretty much. So we say, hey, we're going to pay you like 10% on the like dollar invest like value. But by the way, 100% exempt on taxes. So like if you were at let's say a 50% tax rate, that would come down to like 5% when it's all said and done. So you're actually keeping 100% of that money. It's a massive deal. And it doesn't seem like a lot when it's small numbers, but if we were doing like a $10 million deal, $100 million deal,
it's really big.
All of a sudden it becomes serious. So the really cool thing about this is we're doing a small project. So it's like a proof of concept type of thing. And then it's just a matter of adding zeros behind that. The same principles will apply. And I think that, again, so 10% with 10.5% was like the cash value. We also offered our partners a really cool thing, which is they get to stay at the property.
So you're giving them some use.
We get them some use of the property, which is really cool. They can bring their family, their friends, and depending on what they invest is the amount of days that they get. So typically what's really cool is you can say, hey, if you invest $50K, you get 2 nights or 3 nights a year. If you invest 100, you get a week. If you invest 200, maybe you get like, 3 weeks. Or something like that. And all of a sudden, what we do with those uses, we actually allocate them on the vacancy. It's really cool, right? Because you will have vacancy. We already know when those days are going to come based on our experience in the hospitality industry. And it's cool. And so 10% return, use of the property, 100% exempt on taxes on the distribution of that money. And what's really cool is they get to own a hotel. And by the way, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to operate it. They don't have to do anything. It's a truly passive investment. And it's really, really cool because sometimes when you want to become an investor, this conversation we had yesterday at the longest weekend mastermind that we had.
What, you went from 7 a.m. till 2 a.m?
Exactly. I think our participants got some value.
I think they did, yeah.
So essentially, what I was saying is like when you want to become an investor, you think about passive income, right? And what we found out is there's not really such thing as passive income unless you've had to sweat a little bit first.
Well, for us, I think as operators, I can't find the passive, right? Like there's very little passive in what we do. We're on the job, we're rebuilding, we're finding, we're then putting together the investor pool. We're then operating it once it's done. I mean, so there's very little that's passive. But for our partners that we've been doing business with back in Florida, it's pretty passive for them, right? Like, and we usually do one-off partnerships where we'll buy a house, we'll fix it up, we'll sell it. We partner with someone who's got some money. So they send in some money and then they wait for a check, and then they get a check, and then we do another one. And then in the hotel, in the syndication business, your group of people that you syndicated together, it's more like a social club. It's not only is it passive, but you create these events. I was at one a couple weeks ago, and then you guys had a mastermind. I don't know if it was the same group, but
there was a lot of people there.
A couple weeks ago, it was your group of investors that I got to meet. And they're having dinner together and hanging out and talking about investing in real estate. What are we going to do next? The excitement that's there, like you take them over and you show them what's happening, and it's rolling along, right? Like, so dirt's being moved and it's just awesome. And they see that, they get excited, and then they're doing more. It's a really great concept.
And they get the added value of finally, what I've realized, people pay for access. They pay to buy my time, my experience. Like if you paid me, let's say $500 an hour or $1,000 an hour, I might not get as excited as if you believe in my idea and you say, I'll put 50,000 or 100,000, and I will learn from what you're doing. And I will support your vision. And by the way, now you have access to me. And all of a sudden, like we have access to hang out. We have the added benefits. So a lot of the people that are partners or also want to become operators eventually, they get access to all of our contacts. So and then they get access to other people that are actually doing deals. So what I have found is that when you pay and you invest, you get a different level of recognition and respect from the operators, because now you're not only there to watch, but you're willing to kind of support the vision.
It's really a good way to mentor people, especially people who want to be real estate investors. It allows them to come and be a part of it and actually become a real estate investor, and then hang out with a professional, someone who's an operator, someone who's been doing the Airbnb thing at a high level for a long time and has all of this knowledge. Like you said, it's access to you, and you don't mind spending an hour with someone who's just invested in your project and believes in you. They're wanting you to be successful, and you're wanting them to be successful as well. If you guys are getting value out of this, please give us that thumbs up, that like there, and we're going to take your questions. I think we're probably at a point where if there are questions out there, Adon, we can get it. So if you guys have some questions, put them in the chat, and Adon will get them out to us, and we'll answer some questions. But yeah, if you're getting value, give us that like and leave a comment. Let us know that you're digging this stuff.
Yeah, we're doing this for you. At the end of the day, I think what's been really, really cool about this is just giving like debunking the myth, finding a solution in a market where financing's tight, and then finally, I think what's gonna be even cool about syndicating is, don't tell this to them, but we're gonna put pressure on the banks, and I actually start feeling it, because by the time, I don't know about you, when somebody doesn't need your money, you're probably more willing to give them money. Yeah. Right. So I think that what I found out recently is that the fact that we've basically unlocked this thing about syndication, now we're telling people, listen, don't leave your money in the bank at the savings account. It's paying you 1% or 2% or whatever that looks like. Yeah. And they say, well, no, it's paying 4%. I'm like, yeah, it's paying 4% today. But what about if they change their rules tomorrow? Now it's back to 0.5%, and you're right back where you were. So why don't you all of a sudden start believing in your future, start investing in something that's going to pay you 10 times as much, and you have control over it. You can go see it, you can learn from it, you can get all this added value from it. And so I'm really, really excited to use syndication to help the local community to invest their money wisely in something that they can bring them so many benefits, and at the same time put a little bit of pressure on the banks and say, hey guys, we would love to do deals with you and business with you, but by the way, we don't necessarily need
we don't need you yet. and so for the guy who's making 3 or 4% in some other either a bank or some other low interest earning account, where do you get rents on that? Does that ever appreciate? Never. These are the questions that I would ask. So you can lock in what you'd consider to be a safe 4%, but this is a pretty safe investment too, with 40% tax credits back, and you're making 10% a year plus, and you've got appreciation, and you bought instant equity. I mean, this is such a superior product. Like, just think of it this way, guys. Most of the wealth in the world is created and then stored in, or it's created somewhere else, but it's almost always stored in real estate. So doing more real estate investing is in your best interest. The idea that you should be following the other sheep and investing in a 401k or putting your money in the bank or hiding your cash under the pillow, this is just old, antiquated stuff, guys. You need to get your money to work for you if you're going to be serious about building wealth and eventually getting out of the rat race.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I just thought about when you were talking about is that some people may say, okay, but I'm investing in that, and how is my money secured? And the money is secured because you actually own a portion of the equity of the property. It's actually part of the syndication. We decide how much of the equity of the property we're going to carve out amongst the investor in terms of units. Yep. So that's a big deal, because some people are investing in it. They actually own the thing too, which is really cool. They're not just taking a return, but they actually have equity. So that means if all of a sudden we bought a property for $1 million and then it ends up selling for like 3 million, 10 million, or whatever, and we have all this equity, we have to split that against, amongst the partners, proportionate to their percentage of equity. So like, let's say you put in 100,000 and you're like a 3% owner, then we have to give you 3% of that equity and all those things. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, I mean, so you're making your cash flow along the way. Yep. And then when it sells, you get your investment back plus whatever that equity is, whatever your portion of that equity is. Yep. And it can be massive, right? Like, so you have invested in something that's a value add investment, and let's say you put $1 million in, you end up with 600,000 in, and 10 years from now, when you go to liquidate it, it might be $5-10 million, right? And so their equity dwarfs their investment even.
I mean, there's something that's even better than that. Did you know that at some point, if we're able to do this right, and we're able to refinance, and we can at least provide the initial capital back to the investor, and then we go and exit, whatever that looks like, it's an infinite return, which means there's no way to calculate at that point because all the chips are back in the table.
Can you read the question?
So it says, if syndicating private lending and hard money is not an option, then how can I finance a home that's not intended to be my primary? So I'm wondering why syndicating private lending and hard money would not be an option.
One of those should be an option, I would think. Syndicating your home that you're going to live in, probably not a thing. That's really difficult. Hard money on a house that you're going to live in, it's doable.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of hard money lenders that would say that they don't want to lend in, and I'm one of them, right? Like, so I don't like to do hard money deals where someone's going to live in the property, because if you stop paying, it's very hard for us to foreclose. What was the last one that he thought couldn't work?
And then I think he just said financing, like.
Yeah. So, okay, this is going to segue nicely into what we wanted to talk about next. So if you can't do any of these three things, then you're going to need to find a seller financed deal. So you can't get the bank to lend you the money because of whatever reason. You have a bankruptcy, or you have bad credit, or you don't have the proper income for it, but you've got some down payment money and you could buy a house. So a couple things that JC and I wanted to talk about tonight. One is going out and finding seller finance deals.
Yep.
And so that segues perfectly. So if you can't do any of those three, you can't syndicate, you can't get a hard money loan, and you can't get bank financing, where do you go? How do you buy something?
So I'm gonna ask you, let's talk about a situation where a seller is selling a property, right? And they don't owe anything on the property. So let's just make a hypothetical example. I find a property that's for sale, or somebody's willing to sell the property. They want to sell it for $300,000.
Yeah.
And they happen to not owe anything on the property.
Yep.
And then you say, hey, I don't have these options: financing, syndicating, or the hard money loans. Would you be willing, if I paid you your price, would you be open to giving me terms?
Becoming the bank.
Right. And then I would go. And
this is the Pace Morby tactic.
Okay. And then this is actually the Robbie tactic too, because you've done a lot of this, and I did one with you. So what would that look like for somebody, and what would be the benefit? Let's talk about the benefit for the seller, because that's where people get in their head and they say there's zero benefit for the seller. Can you talk a little bit about that?
No, yeah. So there's major benefit to the seller, right? So one, he's able to liquidate a property that he otherwise was going to have trouble doing.
Yep.
And generally, if he's going to be selling it with seller financing, he's going to get his price. Right. So you're going to get towards the top of the market. Like on the deal that we did, I think I got towards the top of the market.
For sure.
That was last week. Now you stole it from me and you bought it at like 30 cents on the dollar, but that's not your fault. That's just the market went nuts. Right. But generally speaking, the seller finance deal the seller is going to get the top of the market. He's going to get what he's asking. Right. Like,
it's a big deal.
You're not selling it at 50 cents on the dollar and then giving seller financing. You're selling it 100% of ask price or really close to it, and you're getting your.
And sometimes even more, financing. Right? You could even.
And sometimes you say, yeah, so we'll bump it up a little bit so that we can compensate for the amount of time that it's going to take for me to get the money, right, as a seller. So, but that's a big benefit, right? You don't have to worry about an appraisal.
No.
So if I'm selling the property and we come on the $300,000 example,
right?
Does the house appraise for $300,000?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? So then, if I can get a reasonable down payment and a respectable monthly interest payment plus principal, it's a great deal. You know who I think maybe someone should go to when they're trying to buy something with seller financing is go to someone who's had that house as a rental property for a long time, because they're already trained to take the monthly income.
Yes.
And you just come in and you say, listen, whatever you were renting it for before, I'll pay you basically that, close to that, maybe more than that, maybe slightly less, but here's a chunk of cash that you get, and then they're happy to do that deal.
Exactly. Yeah, I actually did a deal like that. So I was actually renting a property for $900 a month, and I asked the landlord at that time. He didn't owe anything on this property. I was like, hey, would you sell this property? He was not willing to sell at that point, but I was his tenant, paying him $900 a month. And one day he says, I want to sell the property. And then we figured out the price. It was a little bit more than I was willing to pay for it. But I said, hey, what if we structure something where I would continue paying you very close to that number, and you could get some money up front? What would that look like? And he got really excited for that. So that's literally all that was my whole pitch. Hey, I'm going to continue paying you. So that way, especially like when you think about seller financing, I think it's for people that are in a position where they don't actually need the cash, right? Because a lot of people put their brain in their other person's brain and think everybody needs the cash today. And that's not really true. Some people have cash. And
you may need some cash, right? Like the guy selling the $300,000 house, and there's more benefits to it. And I think you were going to go there. It was like, he's going to get some cash. He's going to get a monthly payment. He doesn't have to pay the tax on the full gain of the 300. Let's say he's got a basis of 100,000 and there's a $200,000 gain, but you only give him $30,000 down, and now you're making payments. He's paying the tax on it as he gets it, so he gets to spread it out over a long period of time, as opposed to you giving him 300 grand and him having to give 20% of that to the government. That's a big deal, right? That's you do have to pay the tax as the money comes in, but you get to do it over a longer period of time. What's
really cool is that, in the seller finance example, the seller can say, hey, I also want to put an interest rate on my loan. And that interest rate is going to be, let's say, 5%. And if you guys know anything about amortization schedules, which I think is probably the biggest scam that the banks have ever come up with, which is
how they figured out that interest. I mean, that's really difficult math, right? Like,
you know what I mean? Like, it's like, when you go into the amortization schedule, you're like, why is it all paid up front? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, you can talk about our deal, because we did a seller finance with an amortization schedule, and at the end of 5 years, the amount of money that you've paid to me down in principal, it's a lot closer to zero than it is all of the money, right? Like, it's
so in our deal, as an example, I think I'm paying a total of almost $48,000, call it $50,000 a year in payments, and only 10,000 of that is going into the principal.
Right.
So that means the balance of that is all interest. So that means that by the time he sold the property to me for his, top of market price, by the time he put interest, he actually sold it to me for a lot more than that. And obviously, this is the reason why somebody would want to sell on seller financing. So I hope that actually answers your question when it comes to doing seller financing. I wanted to ask you really quickly as we move along, because we can go into seller financing for like a full hour. What do you think about in Puerto Rico, subject to, and if there's any way to do it the traditional way as in the US, or if there's any other creative ways, such as like, what you had on this house, which was kind of like a lease.
We did a lease with an option to purchase.
I'm kind of wondering, what do you think about subject tos in Puerto Rico? Are they, possible? How would they work? How would you do it?
No, so they're definitely possible. And actually on the house that you bought, and we have another question we'll get to right after this, but on the house that you bought, I first wanted to do a subject to deal where I would have had the seller deed me the property and I would have taken over her mortgage.
Right.
And so she wasn't quite comfortable with that. And I didn't do a great job of getting her comfortable with that, because I'm relatively new to this. But there are ways to make the sellers comfortable, like using servicing companies where she could have seen every month that the payment was being made. And I learned that from watching a YouTube. I don't remember if it was Jerry or Pace, but it was like a light bulb, and I was like, damn, why didn't I think of that? That's just so easy, and it gives someone a level of comfort that they didn't have. Could it have been done? So we were negotiating it. Absolutely, we could have done it. I would have run the risk as the buyer that the bank would have called a due on sale clause, right? So if she had deeded it to me in one of my entities or to me personally, then what happens if the bank exercises their due on sale clause? Then I would have to come up with the cash and pay them off, and that would be a risk that I would need to undertake, right? In all likelihood, and I've done several subject to deals in the States, once you start making the payment to the bank 3, 4, 5, 6 months in a row, at some point, and this is just Robbie Krager like kind of theory, but at some point, I think they're allowing me to assume that mortgage by
Pretty much.
taking my check that they know doesn't come from the person who they lent the money to, because I'm blatant about it. I'm giving you a check. It's got Robbie Krager's name on it or my entity or whatever, and I'm handing it to you, and you take that 4, 5, 6 months in a row. I believe that at some point you're absolutely saying, okay,
You're well aware.
You're the banker's well aware, right? So he's taking it over. So it can be done. It's like anywhere else. Nobody knows about it, so it's something that you need to educate and get people comfortable with, and you've got to document everything properly.
Yeah.
So, and we can talk further about that. We got a couple more questions, so I think we'll keep going with them. And
I have a condo in Condado with $170,000 in equity. How can I tap into that equity without refinancing or selling? Is there something similar to a HELOC in Puerto Rico? Do you know the answer to that question?
man, I don't know the answer to that. I would think go to Aceland Mortgage, or perhaps you have a mortgage broker here on the island that you've used. I think that it's going to be difficult because I think the banks, there's not a lot of these programs. It's just a little bit more difficult to get your liquidity or to get your equity liquid. That question, if you asked it in Orlando, Florida, it's like, yeah, you can have the money next week. They'll get you a HELOC. It's no problem, right? You have good credit, you have good income, you've got lots of equity, $175,000 worth of equity. They'll probably give you a $150,000 line of credit that you can take the money out and pay back.
Yep.
I imagine that there's a program like that here. It could take 13 months to get it done.
No, so this is a great question. I appreciate that you guys are watching this and also asking this question. I looked into this a couple of times, and what I heard from many banks is that HELOCs did used to exist in Puerto Rico, and they kind of went away. I also heard a couple of months ago, I remember my partner Eduardo Joy, he was talking to a co-op, and they actually opened up HELOCs for a couple of months.
Okay.
Then once they loaned all the money, then they just closed them off. So the answer is yes. I do think you can get creative with it. And I also think that, I don't know if this condo is actually an investment property. So if you live on it, it might be a little bit more difficult. But if it actually happens to be a business, I think there's some creativity that can be done with this equity. And if you want to know more, DM me on Instagram under JC Morales or Just Cashflow. And I can refer you to maybe Felipe. I think Felipe Melendez has.
You were telling me about a great new loan program. I think that was First Mortgage, but
yep.
We've got a couple of more questions. And guys, we love that you're asking these questions. We want to give you all the value we can. So ask your questions, guys. We'll sit here and answer them as long as you keep asking them. We've been going for about an hour, and I know, JC, you've got to be somewhere in a little while, but hopefully we can answer a few more questions.
I got a good 15, 20 minutes. So the next question is, can I put some money on your projects? And the next question is, to receive some gain. So what's the answer to that?
I think he's asking if he can invest with us in a future project.
I think that's what the question is, Rebecca. Yeah,
so
it's a lady.
That is a great question. We love to hear that question. That's why we do the YouTube channel, and part of the reason that we're out here is that we want to partner with people who want to partner with us. So if you like what we're doing and you subscribe to the channel, all I could say is next step would be to send us an email at theflipflopflipperpr@gmail.com, theflipflopflipperpr@gmail.com, and let's start having that relationship so that when we syndicate our next one,
yep.
Your friends and family, right?
Yep.
So we can't bring you into a syndication if we don't have a relationship. And I think the first step is let's do an email, and then maybe you show up to an event, or
yep.
There's multiple ways for us to get to know each other, but it starts with subscribing and then sending an email.
Yeah, I think that's one way. You can also, if that email that you see it there, it's too hard, just send him a comment on YouTube with your information, and then you can contact them. The other thing is that if you happen to be an accredited investor, which is what I mentioned earlier, look it up like previously, when we started the video, then and you happen to be doing a syndication, yeah, you don't actually have to know the person. They just have to be accredited.
Yeah, so cool. Even if you're doing the friends and family one, if they're accredited, they can be a part of it.
No. So if you set it up as a non-friends and family.
Okay, so a C.
Yeah, a 506C as in Charlie.
Okay.
You say, hey, I just want to do accredited investors. I don't need to know, I don't want to necessarily work with people that I know. I just want to work with people that are sophisticated, that have plenty of cash. It's a decision that you can make. then you don't have to have a relationship. I think it's a good idea to have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Because in general, people would be more comfortable.
I've actually don't think I've ever done business with someone just kind of that organically that we didn't know each other. Like well, I don't like to partner with people that I don't know, like, and trust, right? So you hear that. I really want to be in business with people who are like-minded and who want the same kind of outcome, who have the same kind of thoughts on the way things should get done.
Yep.
That's important to us. So we're unlikely to partner with, if Donald Trump, who we don't know, just said, here's $1 billion, we'd probably figure out how to spend his money without getting to know him. But but really, when we partner with people, it's a relationship business. So our whole thing, and the reason we do the YouTube is so that you can easily know us, and we want to get to know you.
Yeah. So we have a question here. I want to learn more about the mastermind. Can you talk about, I think you have an event coming up in April. Is that right? Can you talk a little bit more about
Awesome. We haven't even put that out there yet. We are going to have a mastermind call where we're going to talk about why people should be investing in Puerto Rico, why we believe that this is the very best place to be investing your money, and doing it with the intent of becoming real estate investors and growing wealth. And so we're going to have a stacked lineup of some really dynamic speakers, and we're going to just try and pour value into you guys that day. And we will be putting out all kinds of information about how you can sign up for that. But if you're interested in our mastermind, it's coming up at the end of April, and you can reach us at the flipflopflipperpr@gmail.com.
So that was awesome. I'm gonna say more about that. So she says, when are you going to open up the mastermind? She wants to learn from the goats. When do you guys think you're gonna open up? First of all, thanks so much for saying the goats. You're too kind. When are you going to open up the mastermind? I think if you're interested, you need to start commenting and just sending your email and say, hey, put me on the waiting list. I want to be first to know. And I actually think that, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'd love to get a waiting list going. So this is something that we've been working on for the past week or so to set this up. It's our first attempt at this. And guys, we're really going to try and have some massive value for you. So it's going to take us a little bit of time to build the lineup of who's going to come and what we're going to discuss and talk about. And we've started doing that. And so if you will let us know that you want to be a part of that, send us an email or give us your email, and we will reach out to you, and we'll make sure that we invite you to come to that.
If you are serious about really understanding and learning how to invest, if you're the type of person that's like, listen, I'm sick and tired of watching, I want to do the next step, you pay. This is the trick. I want to be blunt about it. You have to pay, because something happens. I was telling somebody last night, you have a little room inside your brain somewhere. You only get to open it and access it when you pay for something. I don't know what that is, but when you pay, all of a sudden you pay attention. You start coming into the event, and you don't actually are looking at your phone anymore. You're actually trying to absorb as much information as possible. You're trying to prepare yourself to ask, even smarter questions, even deeper questions. So, and finally, if you want to invest, when you pay to go into a mastermind, you're going to want a return, right? So that's what's really cool. You're going to actually kind of trick yourself into forcing yourself into investing, because you've paid for the information. You're going to get a lot of value.
No matter how much value we give inside of the day, the most value you get out of it is by doing your first deal. So everything that we do on this channel and anything that we're going to do in this mastermind is with that in mind. We want to have a mastermind full of people that are going to do deals together, that are going to become real estate investors. And there may be partnerships that form inside of these groups. I know that's what you guys are doing as well. And I really admire it. I like how you and Edgardo Joy have set up your group. I wanted to call it a club. It's like a social investment club, but you guys are doing deals. You're syndicating, and you're sitting there talking about and encouraging everybody in the group to do deals together.
Yeah.
One person goes and finds something, someone else has got some money, and they partner together. That's what it's all about for us, guys. We want to teach you to be real estate investors by having you invest in real estate.
Yes.
Not just come. I mean, look, I spend lots of money to educate myself every year. I'll go to several seminars this year. I do every year. I'm constantly trying to learn to be better, but I want to be focused on actually creating investors by doing deals.
Yes. So there's another question here. Good evening. Do you use the same lawyer for all your purchases in Puerto Rico? Not all lawyers are reliable. Oh my God, I want to answer this question.
Yeah, so go ahead. You because I've got an answer
this
too.
is like as if if that wasn't enough. This is the reason why you go into masterminds and you pay for access, because typically this is a curated group of people. The lawyers that happen to be involved in this group, they also pay to get access. And the reason why they pay for access, and the reason why you want to pay for access to these masterminds, is because we only do deals with people that are serious, right? I don't know about you, but you don't do deals with lawyers that don't pick up your phone.
No.
They don't actually like understand where, your needs. So by the time you access the mastermind and you pay for it, all of a sudden you can say, hey, Robbie, can I get your lawyer? And you're like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Here's this number. These guys, I've already talked to 100 of them. They all suck. This is the one, right? And all of a sudden, if that one person can help you, I'll give you an example. So that day that you talked about when we were hanging out at Lotte 23 after going to the hotel with our partners, one of the guys said, hey, my family inherited this property and we need a lawyer that can help us navigate this inheritance problem. And they've already talked to 3 or 5 people.
Right.
They're not going on nowhere. And we said, listen, we have the lady that can do exactly this. Give him her phone number.
Yeah.
This lady works, at crazy hours. She'll WhatsApp you.
Yep.
And then I met him, 2 weeks later, and he was like, man, thank you so much. This lady's amazing. So he got the value of like a $10,000-$15,000 mastermind just from a phone.
And the one question that he got to ask the right person with the information.
Yeah.
And you're right about most lawyers. If you say, hey, I'm buying this thing subject to Puerto Rico, Orlando, it doesn't matter. They're going to say, you can't do that. There's a due on sale clause. It's impossible. It can't be done.
Yeah. Yep.
And you've got to find the one that actually knows what the hell you're doing, right? If you talk about syndications, to most real estate lawyers, they don't know what the heck you're talking about. They couldn't set up the syndication. They don't know how you're doing it, or none of it. They would just flat out tell you we can't do it. So to have that valuable access that you're talking about, I mean, that's well worth the price of admission to whatever it group. I mean, if you get one thing out of any of these things that you go to educate yourself on, that's enough, right? Yeah. That's what I look for, is one thing. Do we have another question there?
Is Puerto Rico market trending down? I have a little over $100,000 and I'd like to try to time close to the bottom of the market and buy a fixer-upper property. Oh my God. That's a good question. He wants to time the market to get it at the bottom.
Well, I got a couple of things to say about that, but
Me too.
The bottom of the market probably passed us. We bounced off the bottom of the market sometime around 2019, and it has been going up. Depending on the market that you're in, the super high-end stuff really got crazy. That's a market you're familiar with. The kind of moderate market that, like houses we would live in, that's also appreciated quite a bit. But the working class market hasn't really had that run up here on the island yet. So things are still relatively affordable for that FHA buyer. So a guy who's got $100,000 that's going to buy a fixer, this is still really close to the bottom of the market.
Yeah.
You can reasonably expect in Puerto Rico, if you work hard to go and find, and you look at a bunch of properties, you can find something for $40,000 that you can put 25 or 30 grand in and then sell it for $120,000. That deal exists absolutely in every town on the island somewhere. That is a real thing that's possible to go and get, right?
I think that question is an interesting question, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but nobody has the magic wand. Anybody that tells you this is the time, they don't really know. But what I would say is, as investors, you should figure out ways to make money when it's up and when it's down. So as an example, right now, we just came off of a time where the prices were insane. Right? Like prices went at like record high, all-time high. And we just couldn't make deals work. So we started thinking, how can we make the deals work?
Mm-hmm.
And we started looking into syndications. We started looking into partnerships. We started looking into seller financing deals, right?
Yeah.
Your deal with your house is the same. Hey, I didn't go into it fighting with the price. I said, hey, I know where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do seller financing. So I think that the real question that we should be asking is, how do I make money, whether the market is up or whether the market is down? How can I do that? That's the real question you should be asking yourself. And I think the answer to that comes through just being groups of community and masterminds. And that's why we hang out all the time, is because we're trying to get ideas for how do we make money today.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's all we can control. I don't know what's going to happen in the future.
And I have more to add to that too. So trying to time the bottom of the market. In every market, there are great deals. And if you've got $100,000 to invest and you can buy something that you can make 40 or 50% on your money with, doesn't matter what the market is, buy that deal. That's a really good deal, right? Like, so again, that deal exists today.
Yep.
And it exists in every market. If the market's going up, you can find great deals. If the market's going down, you can find great deals. I would always be looking for a great deal. If the market is rapidly going down, then I'm trying to buy it even cheaper. I mean, and so what you would see as someone who's done this a long time and a lot of times, when the market is going down, as the retail market comes down like 5 or 10%, the wholesale market, the market where real estate investors are buying at, that will usually double how much it goes down. Like, so,
Wow.
so if I was to buy something at $65,000 to expect to sell it for $125,000, and then the market's coming down 10%, so it's going to be now $110,000 house, I'm probably trying to buy that house at 40.
Wow.
So it's a much exaggerated kind of ratio, right? Like, so as the retail market comes down 5 or 10%, the wholesale market might come down 15 or 20 or 30%.
That's incredible.
And so it's always a good time to buy. You have to be careful.
Yes.
But I would say if you've got $100,000 and you're waiting, you might be able to do 2 or 3 flips in the time that you're waiting. So if you're buying stuff to sell and you're going to get in and out of it anyway, it's a good time right now. And I'll answer the question like this too. I don't think that the Puerto Rico real estate market is really going down.
I don't think so either.
I think if you bought a $45 million house in Dorado, yes, you can't probably get $45 million for your house today. But I think if you bought a $150,000 house last week, you're not selling it for $130,000 this week. It's $150,000. It might be $160,000, but it's going to stay flat. It's going to stay level at that entry level kind of price range.
What's crazy, by the way, I can't see any question on the screen if there's anything. But by the way, well, I'm gonna answer that question in a second. But I don't even think Dorado's going down, believe it or not. I mean, like, if you think about it, I may be wrong. The people that are coming to Dorado, they didn't come to live for a year or two. They came to like really take on the benefits for the next few years. So if the market went up or down, these guys are making so much money.
Yeah, I mean, if you pay $20 million for your house, you probably shouldn't have to sell if times get tough. Like, you don't buy a $20 million house without having lots and lots of money.
So I think that even though Dorado is a crazy market, and we can talk about that as well, I think that if you have $100,000, my big suggestion would be, if you know what you're doing in real estate, do what Rob is suggesting. If you don't know, I would say get educated, join a mastermind, start paying for education. Yeah. Right? Like you said, hey, I wish I would have known how you can use a servicing company to do subject to that. Could have saved you a couple $1,000s on that deal, right?
It could have even convinced me to do the deal in a different way.
So,
and if I had done the deal in a different way and I had a deed to that property, you'd have never bought it, right? Like, I would have not been in a position that I felt like I was going to sell. And that.
So education, that my lesson is, if you know what you're doing, go for it. If you don't know, maybe like pay for information, education, access, and then maybe invest in somebody else's deal, half of that money, so that you can protect your capital. Because I think when you go in and you invest that money in something that you don't know, you might actually lose all the money. Yeah. You never know. So it might be wise to diversify in that way.
I like diversification, but the one thing that I just have to emphasize is you have to send your money out to make money. Holding on the money to wait till the bottom seems like a hard thing to do. To catch that falling knife, to find the bottom and time it perfectly, that just doesn't happen, right? Like, it really doesn't happen. You need to be investing, sending your money out to work for you, and using the money properly so that it will grow. Yes, protect it, but send it out to recruit more money.
There you go. Next question is, what's the next hot market area in Puerto Rico? Yanira has just been firing questions. Yanira, thank you so much for all these questions. So what is the next hot market area in Puerto Rico? Ooh, this is a good one.
I think everything that's out of the kind of metro area still has lots and lots of room to grow. So I think someone asked this question on a live we did last time. I like Ponce. I like Ceiba, where the big ships are thinking that they're going to start to come in. If the cruise ships go to Ponce or Ceiba, there's going to be some money made, right? Like our friend Sharif Medawar figured out where the path was that the people were going to walk from the boat into the old San Juan and bought up all the buildings along there and made himself $1 billion. Someone's going to be able to do that in Ponce. I believe that the cruise ships are going to start to come to Ponce.
Wow.
Ceiba is going to have billions of dollars invested in it, and the cruise ships may go there. So those kind of areas are going to have some real big chance to make a lot of money.
Yeah, I also think that, lately I've been looking at the area of Miramar, Santurce.
Yeah.
Some of these areas you can still find deals. We need other investors to come in and like partner with us, or maybe like, go into their own deals as well. I think that's actually very close to inside of San Juan area and Hato Rey. There's so much. What's cool about Puerto Rico is it's an island.
Mm-hmm.
Like once some areas are built up, they can't really build anymore. It's not like we can actually extend ourselves into the water. So Puerto Rico real estate in general, in the last 10 years, I haven't seen it go down. I've just seen it go up.
Even in 10 years ago, it was going up. It's been going up for 10 years.
Yes, exactly.
And so I didn't know that. I thought it was pretty relatively flat and started going up only a few years ago or 5 years ago. But
it was appreciating. It just wasn't appreciating
much
at the rate that it just appreciated in the last.
Well, that's great to know. See, so you have more experience with it. I've only been here for 5 years, so I can mirror what you say. and over the 5 years that I've been here, all I've seen is Puerto Rico real estate go up, right?
Yes.
It's not going up at an alarming rate that you would expect that this is a bubble. I don't think that that's happened at all. And it's gone up at a nice 5% a year, maybe.
Yes.
So that's healthy growth.
No, I'm excited. No, Yanira's just saying she's very appreciative of the life. She's got a good time. Thank you, Yanira. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
She says Ponce because of the airport project.
Yeah, and I'm not even familiar with the airport project, but I've kind of heard whispers about that they're going to have a bigger amount of flights, or a larger portion of the flights are going to come into Ponce, and obviously that will help with growth. My
suggestion would be like diving deep. He says, do you have a date for the mastermind, or where can I find out more?
All right, so we'll get some information out about the mastermind really soon. But we're going to do this mastermind right now. We're planning to do it the last weekend in April. So I think it's a Saturday, the 29th or something like that. I'm not looking at the calendar, but I believe we're going to do it the last weekend of April, and it'll be a one-day event, and we'll start pushing out the stuff. If you send us an email to the flipflopflipperpr@gmail.com, we will make sure that you get the information.
I love it. I'm excited for that. Komodosh asks, is an Airbnb arbitrage strategy possible if you have bad credit? Oh, can I answer that question?
Yeah, please. You're the man to answer this question.
So I've done about maybe 25 of these deals already. So I think I could say that I have some experience doing this. Well, the good news is Airbnb arbitrage is a beautiful strategy because you don't actually have to go to a bank. So they, and you can do it with an owner. And typically, in general, if there's not a realtor involved, owners are typically, not all of them, they're not very, sophisticated. So if you present yourself in a professional manner where they understand the value proposition of doing Airbnb arbitrage, they won't check your credit. So I think it's a really good strategy. At the end of the day, the Airbnb arbitrage is finding an opportunity to, become the tenant, for property, for a landlord, and actually having permission to sublease the property for, Airbnb or, medical travel nurses and all these kinds of things. And at the end of the day, what the owner cares about is that you are going to pay the rent on time, that you're going to have the property in fantastic condition because you have an incentive to do so. And at the end of the day, that you can just be professional about it. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they don't really care about your past. They care about they will care about your past, but they won't really care about your credit so much. They just want to know that you're serious and you're not gonna screw them over, essentially.
Yeah, and so I'm a guy who's got a lot of properties, and if someone came to me and wanted to rent from me and do Airbnb arbitrage, I would be absolutely in favor of it, right? So why would a landlord want JC Morales to take his property and profit from it? And I know that you're going to profit from it, but you're going to pay me top of the market long-term rents.
Yes.
And you're going to keep my property in as good a condition as I give it to you, probably better. And you're almost certainly never going to call me in the middle of the night when the pipes break.
Nope.
Because you've got to go and handle that. And here's the other thing. If things go wrong and you stop paying, I don't have to evict somebody. You're doing an Airbnb arbitrage. I just go change the locks on you and just say, hey, you didn't make your obligations, and this agreement we have is over. So there's a lot of really good things. And so if you're thinking of doing Airbnb arbitrage, you will get pushback from many landlords. But if you can present yourself in the right way, there's a really good case to be made as to why you would do this. I mean,
Exactly.
hey, there's even a case to be made for some people who are running Airbnbs out of their properties, that if you're better at doing the Airbnb than they are, and you can take that workload off of them, convince them.
Listen,
Have those conversations.
I did an Airbnb arbitrage 2 months ago when in Puerto Rico, the rental rates were really high. Everybody's going crazy on the beach. And at the end of the day, it was just, listen, like he's like, I'm like, why are you doing this? He's like, well, I don't want to do the work, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to do the work. I know you'll make money. I don't care. I don't want to do the work. It's very simple. I mean, at the end of the day, he's happy. He's getting his rent.
Mhm.
He knows I'm going to, I actually invested $15,000 into his apartment. So how is that not a benefit for him?
That's a huge benefit for him. Now I will caution you that make sure if you're on the arbitrage side and you're fixing up a landlord's property, that you give yourself plenty of time to recoup your investment. So don't be short-sighted. And I would hate to see you do something for like a 6 month or a year and see how it goes. Because if it goes really well for you and you haven't negotiated the time, the landlord has the right to say, hey, thanks, JC, for fixing that up. Our time is done. And I see how well it's going for you on Airbnb. I'm just going to do that myself now. So be careful with that, right? Like, so structure it so that you give yourself enough time that you can recuperate your investment.
Yeah, I love it. I've done all of that. So somebody, Kelvo del Batey said, real estate is growing because of the tax haven. So I actually think that real estate is growing because real estate grows. I mean, it typically appreciates either a little bit or a lot. But I agree. I think this is one of the reasons why in Puerto Rico it exploded, which is that, we had people that realized, and I've been telling Puerto Ricans forever, my buddies, I've been telling them, listen, by the time that the word is out, that Puerto Rico, it's, a place like Hawaii, except it is a lot closer to the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, by the way, like in Puerto Rico, people are very hospitable. They're very they're very welcoming. The culture is, people are just very friendly in general. The food is fantastic. The weather's really warm. It looks like Hawaii. It actually has over 300 beaches. We have the only rainforest in the...
I think we have 3,000 beaches. We have a lot.
300. We have 300 beaches.
We have a lot of beaches, though.
Yeah, we have 300 beaches in Puerto Rico. I just searched this for an event.
You did?
I'm pretty sure.
That's pretty good. All right. I trust you. You're the local.
So, when the word is out that, wait a minute, I can get all these tax incentives and pretty much live in heaven. And oh, by the way, it feels pretty urban. We have the US dollar. We can use the ACH payment.
You travel here on a driver's license, right? You don't need a passport. You use the same kind of government system that we're used to in the States. So it's part of the United States. And there's lots of reasons that real estate is appreciating here. I think it has to do with a really good economy right now. Like we have on the island of Puerto Rico, if you want work, there's work.
Yes.
If you want opportunity, there's opportunity. If you want to start a business, Puerto Rico is very business friendly right now. So it's a really good time and space to start a business. Plus, we just came out of decade-long recession on the island, right? And so we had positive growth, both with people moving to the island at a rate higher than they're moving away from the island for the first time in a decade.
Yep.
And then the GDP increased for the first time in over a decade. So we had a positive economic growth as well. And so all of those things are going to mean that real estate prices are going to go up.
And what's really cool is that if you're excited to invest in real estate, we are the change of the mindset. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to break the mindset of the island mentality of like, hey, I know where it's good and I'm not going to tell you because you're going to steal that opportunity from me.
Yeah.
And that's why we're using social media and we're doing this to tell people, listen, we have nothing to hide. You know, we want to partner. We understand that in order for us to be able to grow to our fullest potential, we need to invite other people to do the work. And what we know also is that not everybody takes action at the end of the day with the information. So it's all a matter of just changing the mindset, and we are the change of that. So Manny says, as always, thank you. So awesome.
Thank you, guys. So we'll wrap it up here. I think we went for a long time. That was awesome. JC, again, that was great. We'll do this again soon. And thank you all for your questions. Thank you for participating with us. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up for us. And if you want to reach JC, you can reach him.
So if you want to get in contact with me, find me on Instagram under Just Cashflow. And also you can find me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel under my name, JC Morales, where I teach anything when it comes to, Airbnb arbitrage, investing in Puerto Rico, how to start in social media. And reach out to me. I would love to connect with you.
Yeah, and guys, reaching out to me is easy. The flipflapflipperpr@gmail.com. That's the place that we will make sure that we get back to you if you can send us an email there. So we are just grateful for you guys. Hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you next week on the Flip Flop Power Hour. We'll also see you Wednesday for a Q&A session that we haven't branded a name for. So if you want to leave a comment on what our Q&A session should be for Wednesday, I don't know who came up with the Flip Flop Power Hour, but it was a good one, and so we took it. Oh, Adon's saying that I came up with it. Well, I pat myself on the back. We need something for the Wednesday Q&A. And then Fridays, we do Deal Flippers, where Adon and I talk about his perspective as a young, new real estate investor, and mine as a really old, seasoned real estate investor.
Awesome. And I'm excited to see that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks again. God bless.